Welcome back to another edition of the Talking National League podcast. It has been a very, very long time, I do know. Episode 24 it is tonight. And as it is heading towards the Christmas time, the World Cup is now over. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to bring on guests from Notts County, Chesterfield and Wrexham to talk about the current title race. At the moment, we've got Andy and Dave from Wrexham and Chesterfield on to talk about the title race. Hopefully we'll have Tom joining us very, very soon. So I think, Dave, starting with you then, Chesterfield so far this season. You started so strong. The recruitment was very good. It was looking like you were going to be the team to beat. And I think we always knew there were going to be twists and turns within the way, you got 4 points against Wrexham and Notts County. But suddenly, with a week or so had gone, you dropped your minimum points you got from them. And there were 3 winnable games, I think, in your, in my opinion, too.
Yeah, we've had our blip. The problem is everyone else is so good that when you have a blip, and we had our blip when it was 3 games in 7 days, and we lost to Eastleigh, Maidenhead and Dagenham, lost all 3, lost the heads a bit, and then suddenly you're a stack of points behind everyone else, aren't you? And then you're kind of playing catch up, and you're kind of at the point then when you can't lose 1 point because everyone wins every week. And you'll think, oh, phew, we got through that game. That was a hard game. Look at the results. Oh, Wrexham won 4-0. Notts County won 4-0. Great, let's do it again then next week. And then it's kind of, and even when we had the lost at Halifax a few weeks back, it's...
No shame in that. There's no shame in Halifax.
Exactly, yeah. Team in form, We'd won like the last 5 games or something before that, so we're in really good form. And actually in isolation, you go, oh, well, still in the last handful of games, we're well above the points average you want, but then everyone else wins and you're like, oh come on. So we're actually on kind of you look at the points, we're on kind of a good points total at the moment. It's just Notts County and Wrexham are on a much better one, so I think we're very much the outsiders now. But the solace I have in it is that our record against the top teams has been really good. I think in the top kind of 8, if you include Boreham Wood, we've won 5, drawn 1. All right, most of those have been at home, and we've got everyone to play away. But it kind of gives us confidence that if we are probably not going for the title realistically and are in the playoffs, actually we can probably be a team that comes out on top in the playoffs.
Yeah, is that something that you'd say then? You would, because I know this is a question. I think it's becoming now where it feels like Notts and Wrexham, and I know I wouldn't agree with that whatsoever. I still don't believe we'll win the title, but many people may be saying now it's between Notts and Wrexham, and Chesterfield will be excluded from that, title race very, very soon. But for you personally, and I think for the majority of Chesterfield fans, do you still see yourselves as in that title race?
I think most would probably realistically say that the odds are against us in the title race because we've lost 4 games. Notts have lost 1, Wrexham 2. I think you're probably the team that's going to win the title are probably going to lose 4, maybe 5 at most. But and if we've already lost 4, we're going to have to. You never know. We might the second half of the season we might go through and only lose 1 game. And the more we can kind of cling on to them and be a kind of a handful of points away, then we still can kind of feel like we're in the race, even if it's just out of touching distance. But I think it'll be interesting. We might have a huge part to play in who the title does go to, because we'll obviously have the Wrexham away game and the Notts County home game to play. So it'll be interesting. We might have a say in who does get it.
Yeah, we've had a few people coming in. Ian Birchnell, it's not the real one. I have to say that every single time if it does load. I don't believe it's loading actually, because my computer's very slow. But one of them, I think it is loading now. It's not showing actually. But yeah, he says, great to have you back, Luke. Definitely missed your show. Cheers to have you back, Ian. He's a Notts County supporter. Joe Dart's a Chesterfield fan, said, I think we are still in it. So yeah, there are fans out there who do believe that you are still in that title race. So Tom, I'll quickly come to you then on Notts County. Obviously the current leaders in the league. You've had a few games in hand on Wrexham. I want to ask you, do you think Notts County have that quality to win the title?
I think we've got the quality, yes. I don't think it means we will win the title. I think all three teams, I mean, if people are writing Chesterfield off, I think it's the wrong thing to do. I mean, some people comment on the piece I did over the weekend and said, Chesterfield don't belong in the conversation, but for me, they definitely do. And I mean, to be honest, with the teams I've seen this season, they were definitely. And obviously, I wasn't there for the Wrexham game, but Chesterfield were the best team I've seen other than Notts this season. So definitely up there. I think we've got the quality to win it, but I worry if we've got enough quality in depth. I mean, the panic that we had when Langstaff and Chickson went down. I think they're the two positions that we would panic most in. I think anywhere else on the pitch, we've got quality sort of in depth, but at left back and up front, we are a bit light. So if everyone stays fit, then you never know, we might do it. But I mean, we've still got to go away to Wrexham, and that's worrying me because Wrexham at home, they haven't got a single point. So if you've got 3 points, averaging 3 points a game at home, you're probably going to do it if your away form's almost there. So yeah, I think we've got the quality, but it depends. I think it depends on other teams as much as it does us.
Yeah, I'd agree with that on Notts County. I look at all three sides so far this season, and I think maybe not last season because of what happened in the end with Wrexham and Stockport, but I looked at the previous seasons before that. Any other season, all three of you would have been top of the league at this point in the season and probably comfortable at the top, where it does feel like now it's getting so competitive. Obviously, 20 episodes ago, we were having this conversation, and it was your three clubs that were obviously who were the favourites for the title, and it still seems to be that. So it's been predictable in that sense, but you look at other sides as well around you, Woking, Solihull's, Boreham Woods. These are really tough sides that, maybe not be in the title race, but when you're going away to those sides and even hosting them, it's always going to be a difficult game, and it's about getting through those games, especially even looking at the lower end of the table. There's so much pressure on you to keep winning. You can't afford to drop any points any week, and if you notice, when a side does drop points, you find yourselves behind. First place, and I think that's an example of Wrexham when they've dropped points. You looked at that game against York, 1-0 up, 89th minute. York go and equalise later on. Ever since then, Notts are back top, and it's been like this season. Chesterfield top, not Wrexham went top. Notts, Wrexham. It's so competitive, and it's so hard to call who is going to win the title this season. So, Andy, I'll come to you. Wrexham then second place at the moment. You've got a few games in hand on Notts County, but if you do win those games, you'll still be second in the league, a point behind Notts. Do you still feel that you are potentially in the title race this season?
Oh, I hope that we are in the title race. Yeah. I mean, the amount of money we've spent, if we're not in the title race, I think is a taxi for Parkinson. This reminds me a little bit of 2012, 2013, and you guys probably won't remember this because Chesterfield and County weren't in the division, and Luke, you probably weren't born. But it was us and Fleetwood. We carved out a league because we had a good first 11. Now, Fleetwood had the better squad, and in the end, that told. And they also had a red-hot striker in Jamie Vardy. So I can remember going away.
And Halifax.
Yeah, no, he did, didn't he?
Yeah.
Stocksbridge Steel, was it, or something like that as well? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, you just go away to a tough place like Ebbsfleet, you'd win 5-0, and you think, great. And then you'd be looking at the Fleetwood score, and they'd be 1-0 down, and then it would be 86 Vardy. And then you think, all right, well, points not bad. We've got a bit of a buffer on them, and it would be 92 Vardy. And then you just think, 6 or 7 of those. It doesn't just break the fans. I think it breaks the actual first 11 a little bit as well. And it was just that we couldn't really pull clear of them. Now I think what's going to happen with us and Notts is going to be quite similar. I'd actually say that Notts' first 11 is better than ours. I think as the way they play the game, the way they can dominate it. Yeah, okay, we probably don't have that in our armory, but what we do have is we've got a decent squad, and we've got the chance to go out and get more people. Now, what Fleetwood did to us, which we can't do to Notts or Chesterfield, is they went and took our best players because we were a fans' own club, and we couldn't say no to 60 grand for our top midfielder. They didn't even play him, but it didn't matter. They just did. they just did something to disrupt us, make us weaker, make them a little bit stronger. We probably couldn't do that to Knox or to Chesterfield because, they can probably fend off our advances. But that's the sort of key sort of difference in this type of race, I think. If you're asking me what do I think is going to happen, I think we'll go down to the wire. Again, I wouldn't write off Chesterfield. I think there will be a blip for both Wrexham and County, which will bring you guys to it. And if you look at it, Dave, I mean, we've got one game in hand on us. If you beat us at the racecourse, you're 1 point behind us. I mean, that's not insurmountable at all. And my big fear is County, and because I went to the game earlier in the season, they play good football. They've got a red hot striker, and if they can keep it in the transfer window, I think they've got a real chance.
Yeah, that's something I do want to mention, this transfer window coming up. I think for all clubs it could be crucial, to potentially keep players as well. I know there's a lot of talk about Langstaff, Tom, with obviously Notts County at the moment because he's so prolific. I'd probably go as far to say he's the greatest non-league striker we've probably ever seen in recent times. Maybe Ricky Miller might have something.
Come on, go,
We're having this debate, are we? So it was Tishamanga and Mullin last year. Now it's Tishamanga, Mullin and Langstaff now. We'll ask that to the chat then. I think it depends who's most dominant in the chat with supporters. But yeah, who would you say is the best striker then out of all you three? Tishamanga, I think on his day was, but maybe not this season. Notts County, Langstaff and Mullin. I'm going to go for Langstaff, to be honest.
I think Langstaff's the best goal scorer, but depends how you define a striker. I'm not sure he would be as strong. I think he did more off the ball than Shamanga, to be honest. I think he presses. I think that's what Langstaff's most underrated skill is pressing. But he works really hard off the ball. Overall game, Mullin's probably on his day the best player in the league. So, but I can't go against Langstaff. I can't really go.
Paid the most, so he should be the best. I think you're right. I think Langstaff, without a doubt, is a good finisher. So is Tishmanga. But Mullin all round, he does chase, he does harry, he does make things happen, and he can knock one in from 30 yards if you're desperate. He's also got balls of steel. Like if you need penalty, he'll step up and take it. So I would say Mullin, but mostly you get what you pay for. And Tishmanga and Langstaff are fines. They're from lower down. You're probably not paying them anywhere near as much as we're paying Mullin. So I think on resale value, those two guys are ahead of Mullin because Mullin's 28.
Yeah.
I think Langstaff's the one Langstaff's the one that it might sound a bit daft by saying this, but I think he's the one whose skills transfer the best at any level. I don't think he has to. I think there's teams in the Championship run for him. And I think he would. I don't want him to go, and I'm not saying he will go, but I think he would score goals in that division because he is a penalty box striker, and if the ball's in the box, he will score. So, I think all three are very, very good strikers, and I think each sets of fans are going to back their own striker, aren't they? But I mean, they're all absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I'll be back in Disney.
All this talk of goats, I find it all a bit ridiculous. It's okay to have a bunch of players that are all really good players. It doesn't have to be the best. It's fantastic for the National League that you have three strikers like that in the league.
No,
I think realistically, Shamanga will probably go in January.
Yeah.
I think he's over his injury now, but I think it might be. Paul Cook talks a lot about, when I had him on my podcast, he talks about habits, culture and trust. They're like his three things in football. I feel like after the Birmingham transfer fell through and he allegedly didn't want to play for a few weeks because he kind of, like anyone, would lose your head a bit if you were going to get 10 times your salary and then it fell through. I think maybe Cook's trust in him went down a bit, and then that's ended up in Joe Quigley kind of leading the line, who is nowhere near a Langstaff, Mullin quality type player. So, which is a shame because before Shamanga kind of broke his ankle in that horrible tackle, although it wasn't that much it wasn't a red card really. It's one of those things, but it was a shame because you kind of think, oh, he would have scored 100 odd goals in next few seasons. He was so on form. So so we'll probably bring another striker into the equation, and then we can have this all again with another person that who knows who it will be.
We could make a full episode on who's the best striker in the National League. But for me, I think it is all about perception. I look even at, I know there's a lot of talk, and this ain't nothing to do with non-league whatsoever, but Messi and Ronaldo, isn't there? I don't think you can really have one that you prefer. I know everyone's favouring towards Messi now because of what happened yesterday, but you can't really, I don't think when players like that have done just as well as each other, yes, Ronaldo hasn't won the World Cup, you can't really compare the two. They're totally different players, and I think that's the same with Langstaff and Mullin and Tishamanga. They're all different players. They all have different traits, and they all can obviously score goals too. So, yeah, I don't think you can really have a GOAT, as I know the term that everyone's liking to use at the moment. But, yeah, I think it is all about perception. And obviously, if you were a Barcelona fan, you'll have Messi. If you're a Man United fan, you'd have Ronaldo, although I don't know now. And obviously that's the same in non-league too between all three clubs too. But, yeah, I think a question that I did have for you, Andy, on a goal that Paul Mullin scored. Paul Mullin against Stockport last season, FA Trophy. Would you say that was better? The one where he chipped the goalkeeper from the halfway line. Would you say that was better than Mbappe's goal yesterday?
I mean, obviously, yeah, of course it is. I don't see Ryan Reynolds there celebrating Mbappe's goal. He was nowhere to be seen, was he? And so, yeah,
bigger game as well. Much bigger game. Much bigger game. The FA Trophy.
Definitely. I chose that as my moment of the year, not just because of the skill of scoring that goal. Not just because he was in front of the chairman, and I think it really sort of cemented his love for the club and the game, but more it just it put the Willies up Stockport a little bit, and it just led to the last part of the season being interesting, because I just thought that County were going to run away with it. But that goal, plus we beat them 3-0 in and around that time, it just put a bit of doubt, and it just made the last couple of weeks interesting. And, if that season had gone on, or if we just started our good run from just before January, it would have been neck and neck. We could have already be out of this division, because I'm not sure that Stockport would have ballsed up in the playoffs like we did. So it's ifs and buts, but just it was a goal of great skill. It was an important goal. It was live on the TV. It was right in front of Ryan Reynolds, and it just put some doubt in their mind. It probably my moment of the season.
Yeah, something like that could easily happen this season. That could change everything. Let's say it's an FA Trophy. That could have an effect. And I know we all talk about games in hand, but that could also be a positive. So in terms of you can build momentum, you can be playing when other sides aren't playing and getting on the tail. And you look at Stockport and even Wrexham last season. The first half of the season, they were nowhere to be seen, and then suddenly this change happened. And I know I've mentioned it to you, Andy, and I've mentioned it to a lot of Wrexham fans about potential change of manager. Obviously, that's not going to happen now this season. I don't believe it should do. But something could easily just change just like that whenever. And, someone else could be top of the league by the end of the season. And I think it's all about resilience and a lot about mental strength to get out of this division. You look at the playoffs last season, Grimsby, what they had to go through to get out of this division just tells you, everything, all of the games. And that's just how it, it can end up. But yeah, I just want to talk a few about individual players. Dave, I'll come to you on who would you say is your strongest player so far this season? Who's the one who stands out for you?
That's a good question, because we kind of we're in a really nice place at the moment, because we kind of love all the players. There's kind of this whole communal love thing going around. It's really lovely. Obviously, everyone loves Paul Cook because of what he's achieved before, and he has this kind of creates this infectious environment around the club. But since it's his birthday today, I suppose I should say Jeff King. He's the guy that everyone just loves, because he scores some amazing goals. He puts in a bunch of assists, and is just his. I've not seen many players over the last kind of few seasons that have such a great connection with the fan base as well at the same time. There was a great story just came out the other day where he overheard a kid was having King printed on the back of his shirt. So he he waited for when they were going to come and collect it the next day and kind of presented them with the shirt and put some money in a Christmas card for them to buy the next one and stuff like that. So he really gets what it is to be a footballer, but just quality on the pitch, he's just been incredible. So I think everyone would probably go for the king.
Yeah, you look at his stats, goals, assists from wing back, so good defensively. His disciplinary record's gone right up compared to when he was at Halifax, because I know that was a problem for him, and he seems to be sort of, I'd never say a player's complete at non-league level, but he does sort of seem to be at that level at non-league so far this season. He's been so strong for Chesterfield and so vital for you this season. I think that's something that's always crucial, to have characters in the team. And that's something that Jeff King is. I've seen him on Twitter. He clearly loves Chesterfield, and there'd be nothing more for him that he loved more than to get Chesterfield out of the National League and back into the Football League. Tom, I'll come to you then. Is it the obvious one?
Well, just quickly on Jeff King. I mean, I was going to say that would be my choice of Chesterfield. Not that I'm a Chesterfield fan, of course, but he has been nothing short of amazing. And it must have been a couple of months ago now. I put a tweet out saying I think he could play in the Championship again, because he's actually played one game in the Championship before, and people laughed at me. But I think he's 26, and I think he is as complete a fullback as you're going to see at this level. And the fact he can cut inside on his left foot and score one for 30 yards is just outrageous from a right back in a 4 at the back system. It's, ridiculous. But for Notts, I would go Ruben Rodriguez. I think he has been superb. There's so many you could choose for Notts. Obviously, there's Langstaff. Cameron doesn't get as many shouts as he should do from centre back, but he's been a brilliant leader. Chickson obviously has scored 7 goals, league goals already from left back, which is ridiculous for a left back. Especially Chickson, who's never scored more than 2 goals, I think, before. So, unbelievable improvement from him. Obviously, but I have to go for Ruben. Matty Palmer as well. I can't leave him out. But Rodriguez he started the season slowly because teams were focusing on him. So he didn't have he had a good start to the season, but he didn't have the start that people were expecting in terms of goals and assists. But he was playing more of a defensive role, pressing and winning tackles. But since Langstaff's hit his form, teams have now started marking him, and it's freed up Rodriguez to play his normal game. And he's, by far the most creative player in the league. And he's one of those players that he can just run a game by himself. And because the defenders are picking up Langstaff, he's able to drop off a little bit and pick up the ball. And I mean, he will not be playing in the National League next season, regardless if Notts go up. He should not be playing any lower than League One. Rodriguez, and I think on his day, he's the best player in the league. He's just superb. So I have to go for him for our player of the season. He
certainly is a game changer, isn't he, Ruben Rodriguez? He's that sort of player can get you out of a situation where you may not be playing too well, but he's the sort of player, if he's playing well, Notts County play well, doesn't he? And that's what I see as him. And he's another player that should be nowhere near this level, and someone that obviously came from, I believe, the Netherlands second tier. It was something like that, I think.
Tier,
yeah, I have to respect the recruitment team at Notts, who obviously are highly rated of what they do there. But to find a player like him and have him in the side, it's just such a bonus for you, the other players around him too. But yeah, Andy, coming to you then. Is it going to be Mullin? Is it going to be Lee? Is it going to be Palmer? Hayden even?
Well, firstly, Luke, thank you very much for this mini scouting that you've just done for us. I'll be reporting back to Phil Parkinson on this. What I will, I'd say your last person there, Aaron Hayden. I think he's incredibly important at both ends of the pitch. The way that we play, we do quite a bit of defending away from home, and so he's so good attacking the ball and getting it away from us at difficult places to go to. Eastleigh, he was great last week, and then his threat from the box just can't be underestimated, because if you're marking him, it frees up space for the likes of Palmer. I think again, I would be amazed if Hayden stays if we don't go up. I think he's a sort of player at 25 will only get better, and I think he's probably a League One centre half. I think he's got through any sort of rickets of concentration, and now he's just vital to us both ends of the pitch.
Yeah, there were signs of him last season, I know as well, but obviously had his injury problems. Where this season, the amount of goals that he's scored so far, for the highest scoring centre half in the division, he's one of the highest goal scorers in the division, and he's playing at centre half. this season. He's so strong for Wrexham going forward and also defensively too. But yeah, like I'm saying, with all these teams, there's so many individuals that are so strong for each team. It's so hard, to pick one. Knots, like you said, Palmer, Langstaff's there, Chickson, another player who I highly rate as well. Chesterfield, there's Dobra, there's King, Wrexham, like I've mentioned, Mullin, Palmer, so many different players. Does it feel like for you there's certain players in each side, and I'll come to you, Dave, first, that we haven't seen the best of yet, and potentially in this second part of the season could potentially shine for Chesterfield?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few really. It's interesting. We've had players that have had pivotal roles like from the bench this season. So there's like Jesuchik Bulum, who we signed from Matlock, local neighbours, who has been incredible. And we signed him on the back of playing Matlock in the annual pre-season friendly that we play against them. Yeah. And he's been absolutely scintillating off the bench, kind of as someone that you can bring on for the last 20 minutes. He will get it and just run. Tim Akinola, who we've got on loan from Arsenal, he's not really had a start yet in midfield. We've had Ollie Banks and Darren Aldaker and Mike Jones, the veteran, kind of playing in a midfield three for a bit. But when Akinola comes on, he's another one that gets it and drives from midfield. So I think Akinola's probably got a big role to play in the second half of the season. And then, yeah, I mean, there's players like Cooper that we signed in pre-season. People were expecting a lot, and he's kind of taken a while for him to. Has not really played as much. So there'll always be, won't there, those players that come through and surprise you second half of the season. Mike Jones wasn't part of anyone's conversation until he came in and was thrown into like a defensive midfield role, so that obviously people like Jeff King can go and attack. And that's worked a treat. So it'll be interesting. I'm sure there'll be players that come in, but I think Akinola could be a pivotal player in that second half of the season. Yeah.
Andy, I'll come to you then. Now, there's a player for me, and there's one player for me that, although he's produced some big moments so far this season, I do think this second half of the season now, this is where if he gets, I wouldn't say more game time, but more freedom in that role, could become a pivotal player for Wrexham going forward in those big moments, which he has produced so far this season. But I'll ask you firstly, Andy, if it may be the same player as me. And I know it's a difficult question with Wrexham. Is there any player for you so far this season that hasn't particularly shined like we expected? Well, maybe not as we've expected, maybe not got the game time, maybe not had the freedom, like I've previously mentioned. Is there a player for you?
There's one that does sort of stand out, which is Jacob Mendy, who I thought was a great signing when he came from Boreham Wood. I saw him in the two games against us, but then I also saw him on the FA Cup run, and he looked very impressive. He's a powerful player who can get up and down, but he's got a good attacking nous on him. And the thing is, for us, the way that Parkinson plays, he will never deviate from a 3-5-2, so that the wing backs become increasingly important. Now, we didn't really have wing backs to go up last season, but we do this time. We've got two in each position. We've got Mendy and McFadden on the left. We've got Ford, Rees-Hall Johnson and Hosanna on the right. McAlinden in there as well, who quite well. But what I would say is I don't think Mendy's got injured. I don't think he's had the game time. I think McFadden has also improved his level because he knows that Mendy's breathing down his neck. But I think if Mendy does get a run, and it might even be in the trophy on Wednesday night, I think he's got a good sort of opportunity to really sort of nail down that left wing back. The other person I would mention quickly, and I think I know who you mean, but the other person I might mention is Rob Layton, who is coming back from injury. Now, Mark Howard has had quite a difficult start to his non-league career. It takes a while to sort of get used to it and what you're up against in this division. I think he's more or less got to grips with it now, but I still think there's a ricket in him, and I think that Leighton's probably the more assured non-league keeper who probably knows what's expected in this division. I wouldn't be surprised if Leighton comes in at some point and then stays there for the rest of the season. You mean Elliot Lee, don't you?
Yeah, I mean Elliot Lee. That's the one. Third try. Yeah, but like I said, just on those two players that you mentioned, Jacob Mendy, he's a sort of player for me that I see similarities with Jeff King potentially, and I know others may disagree with that, but he's good going forward, he's strong defensively, and I do feel he's got a lot more to offer at Wrexham if he can cement that place at wing-back. Leighton, another player at goalkeeper, had some serious injury problems, been so unfortunate. And then there's a lot of talk about him and Howard and who's the better goalkeeper. I think Wrexham fans are slightly favouring Leighton on his day. I know a few say he's even the best goalkeeper in the league. I disagree with that, but on his day, I'm sure he can be. He's a very good shot stopper, Leighton. He certainly is. I think the other goalkeeper that you don't want to see in a Wrexham shirt ever again is obviously Dibble.
That's harsh, Luke. Come on.
Yeah, I know there's a few. There are a few who on social media have been slating him, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, Dibble, at the back end of last season, when he was the only keeper we had, didn't actually do that badly. And I think it's very data-driven at Wrexham, and they've got a guy called Les Reed from Southampton who's sort of like a technical overseer. And when he did the player reports at the start of last season, he couldn't see much difference between Dibble and Leighton. He said there was a fag packet between them, a cigarette paper between them, he said. And, Dibble's got all the attributes to be a good keeper. He just needs to put it together in his head sometimes. But, Lee... now Jordan Davis is injured, has another chance to really stake it. I wonder if too many games, if the relentless sort of Tuesday, Saturday will get to Elliot after a while. I think maybe he's a player that you would like to ideally swap with Davis and keep him for like Saturday and, give him a week to recover before going again with him. But that's my sort of worry about Lee, but there's no denying his talent. On his day, he's a great player at this level.
Yeah, that's something for me with Elliot Lee, is the fact that there's that trio, isn't there? Palmer, Mullin, Lee behind him. You're not going to get any better than that on paper in this division, probably in any time. But it feels like me with Davis, he's from the town, well liked by the supporters. The numbers that he produced last season, I think a lot of time from opposition supporters, he's often seen as an unsung hero for Wrexham of what he's produced in the last couple of seasons. But Elliot Lee is a player for me that maybe hasn't been given the freedom because Davis has been in there. I don't particularly feel that both of them work. I know others may disagree with that, but I don't think they really work in the same system. I think him having more freedom, behind Palmer and Mullin, he's going to produce some exceptional things in the second half of the season for Wrexham. And I think it is fine margins, and he may be the player to get you over the line come the end of the season, potentially with some big moments, which we've obviously seen in previous years too. But yeah, coming to Notts County, Tom, big name that I've got stuck in my head here. I'll ask you, Tom.
Okay. Well, sorry to do it again, but firstly, just quickly on the other two responses. Jez Chegbalam probably said it wrong, but I just need to give credit to Colin, who's on here quite a lot, Analyst Bar. He actually went to a Matlock game, I think, last season, and he identified him and watched him quite a few times at Matlock and identified him as a player. So when he joined Chesterfield, it was really no surprise from him. I heard about him from Colin. So, yeah, that's just a bit of credit for him. And in terms of Akinola as well, he's a player I'm actually a massive fan of. Did a thread on him when he signed, and he's a joy to watch. And I'm surprised he's not started more games. Started a game really because as well the other week I looked at the top 5 passing accuracy, and he's the only player in there that wasn't a Notts County player, was Akinola. Yeah. So again, high praise for him, and also for Mendy. He was the man I said I think he's well put down as signing of the summer. I mean, I couldn't be a bigger fan of Jacob Mendy. I think he's the best wing back in this division. He's a fantastic player. He was great. Yeah, it was great for Wealdstone. He was great for Boreham Wood. And when Wrexham got him, I thought that's the title race sort of sealed. He's fantastic. And I'm surprised he didn't really miss a minute last season for Boreham Wood. So I think did he pick up a knock or it's like not?
He did his hamstring about 2 months ago. And the thing is, there's no real need for us to rush him back. So he's found it hard to get back into the team, but he's been on the bench for the last couple of weeks now, so he's not going to be too far away.
Yeah, that makes sense then, because obviously that was one of the sort of things that was so amazing about him last season. He plays as a wing back up and down, but he plays every single minute. So, but to actually answer your question, you actually asked, Luke, the Notts, Kevin Scott is one I would say. He's been really good. He doesn't get as many minutes as perhaps he would like, and I think the second half of the season he could really kick on. I think he's got 9 goals, which obviously isn't bad at all, but I think he will be targeting 20 by the end of the season, so he's going to have a bigger second half of the season. I don't think he'll mind me saying that. Maybe Kev Castro, if we can extend the loan, it expires in January, so if we extend that, he's had a really impressive last couple of weeks. It sort of seems to be clicking for him now a little bit. It's previously not quite worked. He's been good, but he's really looking really, really good. And then Sam Austin, I think everyone at Notts loves Sam Austin, and I think he's got a lot to offer. I'm trying to think of anyone else.
Oh, there's a big name, and as soon as I say it, it'll go straight into your head, and you'll have a lot to say on him, Bostock.
Yeah. He will be fantastic. I think he already looked. I mean, in the half an hour he got the other week at Meadow Lane, he was just superb. You can just see his quality, the passing range. He's not gonna chip in loads of goals, I don't think, or assists, but he will just, especially in those last half an hour, be able to see out games. I think he's got that ability, and I think what is so impressive, people have missed about him dropping down to this level, is that he's actually joining a team that, we do play fantastic football. I don't think that's me being overconfident by saying that. We do play passing football, and maybe he's looked to join a side that actually play a style that maybe suit him a bit more. Doncaster's in a relegation scrap. It's not really his sort of style. A team that's going to keep the ball, give him chances to pass, I think it's going to suit him perfectly. So, yeah, Bostock is a big one, definitely.
He worked a treat on my Doncaster Rovers career mode, Bostock, and the only sort of concern for me with Bostock, and I think it is being overcautious if I was a Notts fan, is the fact that you've got Harry Arter, who signed for you last season. As soon as that happened, hands down, I was thinking that is some hell of a signing, one of the biggest signings that I've seen in non-league, probably bigger even, in fact, than the Mullin signing when that all happened at the time, in my opinion, from what, coming from, I think it was at Nottingham Forest at the time. Do you have any concerns about that being replicated this season potentially with Bostock, or do you think it's a totally different scenario?
I think it is a different scenario. I think Bostock has come in off the back of a League One. He's actually played quite a bit of football. Arter, he'd been on loan in League One, but not really played much. I know Bostock, he only played 20 games last season, but he was injured. But he did play towards the back end, and he played a fair amount. And I think Arter, it's probably harsh, but maybe his ambition's not there. He's just sitting in the Forest reserves this season, which obviously he's entitled to do. He's on a lot of money, and he's not going to want to cancel that contract. But Bostock is he left Doncaster. He could have stayed on there, and I think he's left looking for a new challenge. I think he's maybe got a bit more ambition. He's slightly younger, not massively. I think 2 years younger. But I'm cautiously optimistic that it's slightly different, just for the few little things. And I think as well, he's a different type of player to Arter in that he's a bit more. I'm not saying he's got better quality on the ball, but Arter I don't think he was ever that sort of player to run a game by himself. I know he had that amazing game against Manchester United, but never really run a game by himself. Yeah. So hoping it's going to be different. We can only have fingers crossed. And I think the other thing, that we're not dependent on Bostock. He's just an addition to the squad. We were top of the league before he came in. So it's not like we're dependent on him.
This is a question that I do want to ask, Tom and Andy on this, is if, let's say, Langstaff got injured so far this season for Wrexham at any point, and obviously he's in form, Dave, you'll be well aware of what happened with Tishamanga last season, and I think although there were other crucial injuries, that sort of ended your season to a certain extent last season. I'm
going to start crying.
Salt in the wound, wasn't it, last season? Yeah, but if that did, and obviously this is if it comes to the worst, and I do apologise. I do remember speaking to a Chesterfield fan prior to his injury about if he did get injured, would that be the end of Chesterfield's season? So hopefully I don't bring the curse on you, Tom, here. But,
please,
but do you think you have the quality, unlike what Chesterfield had last season, to deal with that if worst came to the worst and Langstaff got injured? Because for me personally, although you don't have too much depth, I honestly feel you'll just get Ruben Rodriguez, Sedwin Scott chipping in more of the goals.
Yeah, I think that on the week when they both got injured, I was probably more upset that Chickson got injured, just because it would mean we we'd have to play Carl Cameron at left. It'd just be a bit of a mess. The team would we haven't got another left back, so it would be a bit of a mess, to be honest. We'd probably play either the main there or Cameron, and neither of them are left backs. But yeah, if Langstaff went down, it would be horrendous. But yeah, Scott could step up. He's not. I mean, to be fair to Scott, he only got 9 goals. Say only, so it's still a good return. But he's not played in his position. He's been playing as like a almost attacking midfielder almost, and like off the striker. That's not really his position. So if he did get the chance to play in that central striker role, who knows? But I'd rather not have Langstaff injured. But if he did, I think we'd do okay, and I think we'd bring in if it was a serious injury, I think we'd bring in a replacement. I think we'd bring one in fairly quickly. I think we'd probably have someone lined up to bring in. To be honest, I don't think we'd want to rely on, and this is no disrespect to him, but I think Mitchell would play many minutes if he could get down.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. Andy, I'll ask you then, and this is, in my opinion, a different sort of scenario if Mullin got injured. I have a totally different opinion on that, but if worst came to the worst, and I know he has had the odd niggle before, but nothing serious, if the worst came to the worst, do you think Wrexham would be able to cope? Because obviously there's Palmer, but do you think that'd be enough?
I mean, Palmer's a very different player to Mullin. He does a very specific job in the team. He holds the ball up, brings up people in. Mullin is the talisman, really. I would actually say if there is one area we are a bit short, I think it is up front. I think we have Sam Dolby who could come in, but is very much another sort of Palmer player, a big sort of bustling centre forward. I don't know if the other option is maybe pushing Lee a bit further forward, but because of Davis being injured, that might not be a possibility, although we have just signed Andy Cannon, who could probably take that role, and it does look a good signing, actually. What I would say, what is different this season from last season is we've actually changed our transfer rules. So last season, as we're a Welsh club, we couldn't sign anyone outside the transfer windows. Now we've sort of lobbied the various FAs, and we've got that changed now, so we can sign anyone the same as everyone else, like loans. Like we signed Cannon on a
massive
transfer window open. So that does help us. If it was last season we lost Mullin, I think our season would have been screwed. This season, I think we probably have the money and the actual ability to bring someone else in, and I think they'd move pretty quickly to sort of fill that gap, and they'd need someone. There's no way that you can have Mullin fall out of the team. There's no one in the squad who can really replace him at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and that's exactly what I was thinking. I think if Mullin did get injured, I do feel Wrexham would have the resources to come in and bring in another player. Would he have the same effect? I don't know, but I think that could be something crucial. And obviously, I think Mullin's that type of player that I don't think, and I don't want to jinx it for you here, but I don't think he's the type of player that you would see get a serious injury. Just the way he plays, I think he can give it back. Unlike other players in certain situations, in my opinion. He's that sort of player that no one likes to play against because he bullies defences essentially, in my opinion, especially when he's played against Halifax before. But yeah, like I said, if the worst did come to the worst in that situation, I think Wrexham could just go out and buy another striker. And I do believe you're rumoured with a current striker at Carlisle, so that might be a potential player to bring in the January transfer.
Do tell more, Luke.
Pardon?
Do tell more.
Yeah, I will tell them all. But yeah, I just want to quickly ask, and it's a bit in hindsight, this sort of question, but if each of you three could bring in another player from a different club in this division, who would it be? Dave, I'll start with you. You're on mute, Dave. There we go.
I'd probably... I don't know. I'm really happy with them all. We probably need...
No, I hope it's not Christian Dennis that you're referring to, because that would be a bit heartbreaking for us county fans. He was loved at county, so sorry to interrupt there.
I liked it. I loved him at Chesterfield as well. He was very popular at Chesterfield.
Yeah, I was checking in Carlisle strikes as well, and I was a bit gutted if it is Dennis. He's got 11-19 for them, so...
Yeah.
We're back players, aren't we? Stealing a player. I'd probably, it'd be our goalkeeping department is it's probably the one place there's a bit of a question mark over it at the moment. Lucas Coblan came in, and we all knew he was a bit of a maverick anyway, and then it turned out, he is still a maverick, and obviously got sent off on the first game of the season, just kung fu'd someone after 20 minutes, why not? So Ross Fitzsimons came in after coming from Europa Point FC or wherever it was. He was in Gibraltar at the time, and he's actually been really, really good. He's been very impressive. I think there's bits of his game that could improve. His distribution's not always that great, and was kind of at fault a bit for the Halifax goal. But so I'd probably have a goalkeeper. Leighton is when he's fit and on form, great keeper. I've always really liked Ryan Boot. I've always really liked Boot. So I'd probably be stealing a goalkeeper from someone.
For me, for Chesterfield, and this is realistic, I'd get McShane from Dorking. I know you've mentioned needing a striker potentially, and I know Chesterfield, I think there's only been one game this season where they haven't actually scored, and that was against us, but having someone like McShane just to top it off going forward, I've noticed when I've watched Chesterfield, they like to put it in the box. I know Wrexham and Notts County both like to do that too, and it just feels like at times there isn't any, old-fashioned centre forward there to, finish it, and that'd be a realistic signing for me. Albeit, don't know if Mark White would let him go, but that'd be a great signing, I think, for Chesterfield if he could do that, and it is in hindsight. But Tom, I'll come to you then. I know sometimes you may even say we don't really need anyone else, but from Notts' perspective, I'd probably say depth. And I don't know in any particular position, but who would it be for you?
Yeah, can we take Mullen and not play?
I knew he was coming.
I'm joking. Just on McShane, I've actually seen him linked. Well, I don't know linked. People have been talking about it on social media.
Probably where I've got it.
He has signed a new deal at Dorking, but it is one that could happen. I really like Toby Malarkey from, I said that wrong as well, but from Altrincham.
Yeah.
But we don't really need a right side centre half, probably don't. We've got Brindley already there. A depth player. Another Dorking player I won't mind, Ryan Seeger, who got 20 odd goals last season, I think Hungerford, and he's in double figures, I think, for Dorking. He's sort of similar-ish mould to Langstaff, maybe. Maybe I'd take him. Obviously a goalkeeper as well. As much as I love Slocum, if we could take one of the top keepers in the division, maybe. I quite like Dan. Another Dorking player, Dan Lincoln, I quite like him. Or Wheelstone keeper as well. But maybe one of them. I don't know. It's tough. It's a good question. It's a really good question.
It's tough though, isn't it? I do get that. Andy, I'll come to you then, and I will give you the opportunity to say no one, because unless you're going to say Langstaff, I wouldn't be surprised if you did say no one. But if there was any player in this division you could sign, who would it be?
Sorry, Tom. Cover your ears, but I would take Rodriguez. I think he's a cracking little player. I think he's the sort of player that we'd be looking at in the sort of Mendy role. You want to buy someone who you think can go up a couple of divisions, and I think if you pick up a guy like him, he can grow with the side. I mean, I'm all for sort of like a short term, bring someone in and get yourself out of the league, but I do think there's got to be more of a long term planning with Wrexham, and I think Mendy is the sort of first signing where I could think, I can see what he's doing here. Mendy could be. He could come with us to League One, or he could be sold for a big profit after a couple of seasons. And I see Rodriguez in that sort of in that mould. It'd also be nice to weaken County. I mean, that's going back to what we're saying about what Fleetwood did to us. So there is an element of the dark arts in it as well. But him and Lee fighting for that attacking midfield role, it would be awesome to see them push each other.
I think. When I look at all three sides now, and I look at the weaknesses to them, and I think it's very hard to pick out weaknesses in all three sides. Like I've said, all three sides are some of the strongest sides I've seen in non-league, and probably since I've been watching non-league and taking an interest in it. But I look at weaknesses at all sides. I look at Notts County, and I look at the depth. I look at Chesterfield, and I look at the slight inconsistency potentially. And I feel like when they go to away games where it's quite a tight pitch, don't really suit them. I think Dorking being one, Maidenhead being one, Altrincham, although they won there, it's a difficult they seem to struggle at those tight pitches, in my opinion. When I look at Chesterfield and Wrexham, we know at home they're terrific, but away from home, I don't know what it is. And Andy, I'll come to you. What do you think that problem is, and how do you resolve that away from home? Because I wouldn't say it's a bad away record, but it's nowhere near the same extent as the home record.
It's all about controlling midfield for me. We've got two very willing runners who we've been playing for most of the season in James Jones and Young. Obviously, Young's a fan favourite. He's been there for years. He puts everything in every match. But sometimes you need someone to sit and dictate, and that takes the pressure off you when you're away from home and you're seen as a scalp, because you go to a lot of the away clubs, and because you're the Hollywood FC, because there's a lot of money, because we're bringing 2,000 fans, people they target that as one of their biggest games of the season, and sometimes you can get caught up in that and you can be chasing them rather than dictating it yourself. So what he's done to address that is finally played Tom O'Connor in midfield against Eastleigh, and I would say it's probably the most complete away performance we've had this season. It was actually quite ominous because we never looked in danger of losing that game, and Eastleigh have got a really good home record. In fact, the only other people who've beaten Eastleigh away are County by the same score line. So that filled me full of a little bit of hope to have Tom O'Connor, a defensive mid who can put his foot on the ball and dictate things. And I think that, and the introduction of Cannon, who is another person who can come in and really sort of grab the game by the scruff of the neck, I think those are the sort of moves he's made to address that. And you've just got to hope that they can sort of find the system now to really sort of put teams on the back foot away from home and not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Do you sometimes see that in away games, and those crucial away games, when it really does matter against Notts County and Chesterfield, there's times where you don't get to play your usual bully boy type of football, which, to be honest, is how you play at home. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the dark arts of the game. And, it works to perfection sometimes at home and obviously away in certain games. But it feels like when you come up against a Chesterfield or a Notts County away from home, they're giving it back just as hard. And you can't really have a plan B where there's no way for you to, break through and score, get that opening goal or that equaliser, which you obviously need. Does it feel like potentially adding a player as a winger, a fast little winger in the January transfer window, and this is just my opinion, would benefit you so strong in the second half of the season? Would that be something that you'd be looking at to, against those games? Because of course you've got Notts and Chesterfield at home, haven't you, in the second half of the season? But for those difficult games away from home, do you feel that's something that you can work on?
Yeah, definitely. I think Palmer's deceptively quick, but you wouldn't say he's lightning. Same with Mullin. So those two play a very specific way. And at home, we've got a lot of weapons in our armory. I mean, if we're not outworking you, if Mullin's not banging one in from 20 yards, there's obviously the long throws and the set places, which we do quite well. Away from home, that's a little bit different. And I think just having that different option of someone pacey who could come on with half an hour to go, tiring legs, I think would add another dimension to our game. Now, we had a player, it must have been about 7 or 8 years ago now, called Adrian Chislevitz, who was a lad we got from City, and he was a very quick, direct player. Now, couldn't deliver the last ball, didn't really score as many as he should be. I think we had Brett Ormerod on our podcast a couple of months ago. We said Chislevitz could have been a world beater, but wasn't right in his head to really put it together. But what I would say is the threat of Chislevitz coming on was almost worth more than the player, because suddenly those centre halves know about his pace and they just step back 5 yards, give you a bit more room to play. And I think if at the moment Dolby's not going to put that fear of God into centre halves, because he's not lightning quick. But you're right. If we had the pacey front, I don't think really a winger would work for us, because it's not the way we play. We just don't play with wingers. But a pacey front man who can really take really go in behind, I think would be a great little signing for us. Do you know anyone? Anyone to throw out?
No one at Carlisle. I was just thinking though, and I know I think I've seen it on a video or something with a Wrexham supporter. I think he were wanting 5 players that he wanted to sign, and remember he mentioned Gregor Cox, who's obviously at work, and obviously there's no rumours with that, but he's a fast player in the midfield who you could potentially bring in. But yeah, he's a difficult one because I know Parkinson, he's quite naive. He does like to stick with that certain playing style. He doesn't really like to change it, and that's something where could potentially be your downfall. And I know the Wrexham supporters get very frustrated with that, especially when it's not going your way. But to be honest, it does work, and I think it might be the term in Parkinson we trust, because you're in a very strong position at the moment. You're only 1 point behind Notts County if you win your games in hand, and it's still a long time to go until the end of the season. So anything can happen by then. And let's face it, if you do win the league this season, which is still very likely, and you haven't signed a winger, no one's going to be complaining there then, are they? But Dave, yeah, on Chesterfield then, I've mentioned the weakness that you struggle at your so-called traditional non-league places. I think that's a little disrespectful, but Altrincham, Maidenhead, sides like that where the pitch is quite congested, you seem to struggle at places like that. Would that be something that you'd agree with, or would it potentially be another weakness that Chesterfield have?
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. Yeah, I mean, we've, for example, at the start of next year, we'll have Wealdstone away 3 days after playing West Brom at home in the FA Cup. That's the kind of game I worry about. I don't really worry about Wrexham away, or we'll have Solihull away, Southend away, we'll have Woking away second half of the season. I don't really worry about those away games. It's the other ones. Because I think we just are sometimes susceptible to one of those games where everyone is a bit 6 out of 10 and it's a bit of a nothing match and you just lose to a goal. A bit like that Halifax game, really. It's
because
kind of a game that could
dreadful.
just be a 0-0, rubbish pitch, cold day. It's just, and it's one of those where you think, probably if you go out with a point, you probably go, we did all right to get out with a point on that.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we're susceptible to maybe losing those. The good thing is we have got plenty of goals in us. Like you say, we've scored in every game apart from that Halifax one. So we have got goals in us. But and then when you've already lost 4 games, those kind of odd losses that you get every now and then become even more gutting and apocalyptic to the fan base. But I think just as a title race as a whole, just going off tangent a bit, I think it's really fun and exciting that we've got 3 really good managers that are all very different in style. You've got 3 teams playing a very different style of football, all with really good quality players in them. So it is a shame that someone's going to miss out. But and wouldn't it be funny if Woking just overtake us all and then win the title?
That's something. Yeah, I haven't even mentioned that yet. There's still. I wouldn't say that, but Woking. There's been times where they've been ahead of Chesterfield this season so far. They're looking at a very strong side. But yeah, they're a team that we could talk about on another day. But yeah, Tom, just finally coming to you then on Notts County, and it's so hard, like I've said, to pick out the weaknesses in each side. But there is always a weakness. You could win the league by 100+ points. You'd still find a weakness somewhere. But Tom, it's sort of over-analysing it, but Tom, for you then, if there was some sort of weakness for Notts County, what would it be?
Well, first of all, I think everyone knows about the depth. I don't think the depth is as much an issue as maybe even I've said it is, or others have said, because you can only select 16 for your match day squad, and it's very hard to keep a bigger squad happy. I think we've probably got the best bench in the league. I would say, like the other week we had Bostock, Badrami. I think the main was on there, Scott and someone else was on there. I mean, that's a ridiculously good bench. But then outside of that bench, we haven't really got any players at all. So, I mean, we've got quite a few out on loan. So maybe the depth isn't as bad. But I think one thing we do, I mean, Maidenhead was the first time we've really done it, but a late goal with chasing games. We don't often chase games, but when we do look a little bit like devoid of ideas sometimes. I mean, Yeovil, we just couldn't break them down at all. Dorking, that was a bit heartbreaking, to be honest. I mean, how we actually lost that game, no idea, and we should have won it. So maybe late goals, and what Andy said earlier about when Fleetwood would score that late goal and it'd break you. I mean, one of the worst things I always have is when you're in the on the away trip, you stood there and people were saying, "Oh, Wrexham are losing." You think, please don't tell me Wrexham are losing, because we know that at full time Wrexham are going to be winning, and that is the worst thing. And that might be our biggest weakness. That there's a team that we're in the title race with. That, I mean, I know against York it went our way, but 9 times out of 10 they seem to score one late, and then it's the worst thing. You think, oh, brilliant, we've won, but Wrexham have won as well. So if it does get neck and neck and they keep finding out the results, I wonder if that'll be our weakness. But first side, maybe late goals. But I know we scored one against Maidenhead, but maybe late goals, yeah.
Yeah, you also seem to concede the odd one just out of, it's like lack of concentration at times. You know, you find it very difficult to break down sides at times. I think you're a lot better this season than what you've been previously in previous years, because you've got Langstaff, and I think, you know, you're crossing it into the box well, you're working the ball up the field a lot better now and a lot quicker. But you still have your issues like Yeovil at home, where you do struggle to break down sides, and it is a slight criticism, I would say, but sometimes you go 1-0 up and you look comfortable, but there's other times where you find it very difficult to find that goal, and this is where sometimes Wrexham can be a lot stronger, because, you know, they're 0-0 the closing stages of the game, they find a way to win, and they're not always find that. You know, Yeovil, do you feel like if Wrexham were playing Yeovil at home, Wrexham would find a winner, where Notts County obviously didn't, and that's the fine margins which may, by the end of the season, in my opinion, be the difference between Notts County winning the title and not, because this is just my opinion, but I honestly feel that only one team out of the three of you will be going up next season. I think in the playoffs, I think second place, we saw what happened to Wrexham last season when they were second place. I think it'd be so demoralising if it does go down to the final, you know, game of the season or whatever. I can't see in the playoffs second place doing well because of the heartbreak. Third, even potentially, you know, if Chesterfield do come third as it's looking at the moment, still I wouldn't fancy Chesterfield. I don't know. I think it's a lot about opinions, that, and I think it's quite hard to say because we're only just over halfway through the season. Yeah, but just the final. Go on, sorry. I was
just going to say quickly, just very, very quickly on the you said about a very good point about the defensive mistakes, because as much as I do love them, Slocum and Cameron, maybe even Brinley, they've all got like a mistake in them sometimes. And it hasn't been nowhere near as bad this season, but there is the odd time where, you know, just the pass back is just underhit completely, or Slocum plays one straight to an attacker and they score an open goal. There's been a few like that, and if that happens in a big game where we lose 1-0, that could be, yes, I think that's a really good point. I just wanted to highlight that we have got a few mistakes in this as well.
Yeah, just one final question for you all before we wrap the show up. Dave, I'll come to you first. In order, and I know I've asked you who'd win the league, but in order, who's coming first, who's coming second, who's coming third? Potentially maybe Woking. I know we've talked a bit about them. I know it's quite early, but I'll ask you, Dave.
Yeah, Woking, Southend, Barnet. I will go. I think Wrexham will win it. I think Notts County will be second. I think we'll be third. Yeah. I think we'll win the playoffs.
Oh, big statement.
And I don't think we'll be playing the second place in the playoff final. Like you, I agree that I think one of Notts County or Wrexham are going to win it, and the other one won't go up.
Yeah.
So just because sometimes you get a team, don't you? You might end up with 100 points and finish second. Mm-hmm. In which case,
stupid last season.
It was to go again for the playoffs,
last season. Yeah.
If we end up with kind of a high 80s, low 90s type of score, then Halifax playoff final. Sorry, Jeff King scoring against his former club.
Oh no, he did it last season.
I'll come on the podcast to talk about it.
Yeah, no, please don't. I'll come to you then.
You know what? It would be the most Wrexham thing ever if Woking won the league, and I haven't really ruled it out. I can see, like Fleetwood against Wrexham, which is an analogy I keep coming back to. I think we'll probably put County towards the end, but it will be close, and there'll be some weeks where we really think we've blown it. But there'll be a few twists and turns. Look, he's got to get promotion. There's so much money behind this club. The documentary rests on it. He's got to go up, and. What you said earlier about was there a question mark over Parkinson? If they hadn't started like this, yes, he probably would have been gone by now if they hadn't started well. But he's bought himself this season, especially, to go all the way through the playoffs and see what we can do. I think we'll win it. I think whoever comes second. Look, we came second on a huge point total twice, and we've blown it twice. There's just something mentally that goes when you don't win the league and that, and it's hard to press the reset button. So I think it could be a shock to who goes up with us if we do go up, but it might not be. It could be Southend. They're a good side on their day.
Yeah, I'll come to you then, Tom. Finally.
Yeah, well, I hope I'm wrong. That's probably giving it away already. But at the start of the season, I came on there and I said that it'll be Wrexham, not Chesterfield, and I'm going to stick with that. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to stick with Wrexham to win it, not come second, and Chesterfield's come third. I will say about the playoffs. Firstly, we're not very good in the playoffs. We lost the final.
None of you are.
Well, yeah, we lost the final on the quarter. But what I will say about second is that you should be in the final if you finish second or third, because you've only got to play one game, and it's a home tie as well, isn't it? And I think that is massive. And then you get to the final, and it is a 50-50 in the final. I think on the day, it genuinely is. I mean, it's the same with any playoff. I know every game is literally 50-50, but there's something about a playoff final where it really is just 50-50. Yeah. Hope I'm wrong. I think it'll be close, but I just think Wrexham have got too big of a squad, too good of a squad. I think they have to win it. You just know what they've got a good feeling they have to win it. They just I just think they will. I've always thought that.
Yeah. When you say Wrexham have to win it, I totally agree with that. But if worst came to worst, I couldn't see Wrexham win it in the playoffs. I just think I look at them previously, even going back before the takeover when I think they once came second. It might have actually been the Fleetwood season, and no, it wouldn't have been that. It was when they lost to Eastleigh in the playoffs. I remember that. Tom, I know Notts don't have the best record in the playoffs. They lost to Harrogate last season. They lost to Grimsby, and that's another thing: lack of concentration in that game. I don't know. I think I'm gonna. I've not said this once this season. I didn't say it once last season, but for the first time, I'm going to say Wrexham to win the league. I think that'll happen. I'm going to stick with Notts second.
Verbal contract now between everyone. Verbal contract.
Yeah, we'll have to have one, but Notts second, Chesterfield third, and I honestly feel in the playoffs it'll be a Southend, not a Halifax, because we'd just bottle it anyway, even if we made it. But so it'll be I think a side like that. I won't be surprised if Southend or Woking in the playoffs would get it, and I only feel there'll be one side out of all four of us, if you include Halifax, that'll get promoted next season. But yeah, that more or less wraps it up then. Cheers, lads, for coming on. It's been great to speak to you, and for once we haven't had a talk about frost covers or anything like that for once. So yeah, cheers for coming on, lads. I do appreciate it, and cheers to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Hopefully we'll be back more regularly now. Cheers, lads.
Cheers, Luke. Thank you.
Cheers.
That's on. Thanks.
Computer's that slow, it's not even finishing.